Google Data Studio is a free data visualization tool included with your Google Workspace for Education account that allows you to illustrate your data in a variety of engaging reports. With an easy-to-navigate interface, Google Data Studio has upped the tempo in the Google world for teachers. This video will teach you how to use data collected from a Google Sheet that was linked to a Google form to create a reading leaderboard for your school. However, you can remix this content to use Data Studio with any Google Sheet to help you better visualize and analyze your data. From analyzing common assessments to PLC meetings, Data Studio is sure to be your new favorite Google instrument. Without further ado, let's pump up the volume as we explore Google Data Studio. So begin by creating a new Google form. You can do that by typing in forms.new or hopping over to Google Drive and clicking on New and then Google Forms. So our Data Studio is going to compare the total reading number of books and pages between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So our forms then are going to be specifically assigned a grade level. And that way our data that we get is very nice and clean and better to be visualized in Data Studio later on. So you can see our middle schools are broken up into teams by grade level. And then we have a section for each of the homeroom teachers and each of the ELA teachers as well. The reason why we did that is we want to be able to filter between which class is actually reading the most books and pages as well. And our students are doing that not only in ELA, but also in their homeroom time. And then after that very basic information, we hop into the book information, the title of the book and the author. So you can see some short answer options for our students to complete here as well. The genre of the book, the number of pages. So this will be done when the book is completed, not every day, but after completion of a book. And then we wanted to better analyze where our students got those books as well, be it from the Media Center or an online library from home or other. So a very, very simple Google form, and you'll notice that this Google form doesn't collect any student data. It doesn't ask for a student name. It doesn't ask for an email address. We're keeping this nice and clean and protecting our students' personal information. Once you have one form created, what you'll need to do then is click the three dots in the right-hand corner to make a copy. So we were able to make a copy for 7th grade and input the 7th grade teams and teachers, and similarly for 8th grade as well. Now, it's really, really important with your Google form, after you have everything set up and created, that you navigate to the Responses tab, because in the next section, we're going to talk with you a little bit about how we're going to merge this all together with Sheets. So to access your Google Sheet from your Google form, you're just going to click on the Google Sheets icon to view your responses in Sheets. When you do that, you'll be prompted to create a new sheet, and you'll just follow the on-screen prompts. So you can see all of my form data has imported into my responses spreadsheet here, and it shows up on this Form Responses tab. This data will ultimately be used to put into my Data Studio project. I will need to make sure that my spreadsheet results are shared, that anyone with the link can view them. To do so, you'll click the Share button in the top right-hand corner, and from the Share tab, you are going to, under the Get Links section, click the Change button to make sure anyone with a link on the internet can view this. So this is only if this is not student personal information or information that needs to be protected. You can always make a Data Studio project with protected information as long as you make sure your sharing permissions are shared with just individual people as opposed to public. Then you're just going to navigate to Data Studio, and that is just datastudio.google.com. And then once you're here, you're going to see that you'll have some reports and things accessible to you, but let's start with this blank report. So I'll hit the plus sign to create a blank report, and then you're going to notice one of the first things Data Studio is going to ask me to do is connect some data to my report. That's why we had to set up that form and that Google Sheet first. So I'll click on Google Sheets. And then you have a couple options here. This is going to search for all items that are a Google Sheet, Own with Me, Shared, Starred, URL, all of this different information. So one of the things that I like to do is just go specifically to that Google Sheet and copy the URL and put it directly in here. Or if you have it named in a specific way, you can search for it by the name. You notice once I find that sheet, it's going to say which worksheet from this spreadsheet do you want to access. And for me, it's my form responses one for where the results of my Google form went. And then I'm going to go ahead and keep both of these options enabled to use my first row as headers and to include any hidden and filtered cells. I don't have any, but I'm just going to go ahead and keep it on there since it's the default option. And then you click add. It's going to give you this little window just to remind you that you're adding this to your report. And then you will see your first piece of data has already been inserted into your data studio, but we actually don't need this here. So I'm going to delete it just by pressing the delete button on my keyboard. And then I'm going to get started designing. Another Google file, one of the first things I like to do is give it a name or a title. So I'm going to add that up here at the top. And then what I'd like to do is first insert an image that I'm going to use kind of as my dashboard image. The reason why I want to add that is because what Data Studio will eventually do is design a theme based on the colors from my image. So I'm going to insert my image first. To do that, I can click this little image icon here, or of course you can go to the insert menu and then select image. So click image and I'm going to upload from my computer, and I already have my image for my dashboard saved here. So I'll select it and then set open. And then just like any other Google file, you see I have the ability to move this image around and resize and align it however I would like. You'll notice from my image, when my image is open, I have the image properties menu that appears that allows me to preserve my aspect ratio so that I don't distort my image when I resize it. And I could also insert a link. For example, I could link this image to the Gold Hill Middle School website if I want. And then I also have a whole style option menu here, which would allow me to add a background border and a line and even a shadow to that image. So now that we have that picture in there, you can go up to the top right over here and see where it says theme and layout. When you click on that, you can see you have some different themes built into it, much like a Google slideshow or presentation does. But notice at the bottom, it gives you the ability to extract the theme from the image. So if I click on that, I can go ahead and upload my image that I have saved. And now it's going to give me 3 different options based on the colors from my image so that everything matches perfectly. I love this little trick. So I'm going to select this dark one here and then hit apply so you can see what it looks like. Wow, looking good already. So my next step is going to be to add some buttons on here to differentiate between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then I want those buttons to be hyperlinked to my Google form. So just like adding my image here, I'm just going to go to the insert image and select upload from my computer because I've already created some buttons in Canva and have them ready to go. So I have a 6th grade button here, and I'm going to insert in a 7th grade and an 8th grade as well. Once you have your buttons in here, you do have some other formatting options in here. You notice that you have the ability to arrange different objects. So if you hold down the control button, you can arrange and you can distribute horizontally. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to hop through this really quickly, put some stuff in here. And now let's go ahead and hyperlink these images. So you've already know from our image properties, all I have to do is hyperlink the link in here to my Google form. So I'm going to hop over to Google form, and from my Google Drive, I'm going to grab the link to each of these forms. So once you have the link, you just click your image, select insert link, and paste your link to your Google form in here. And you have the ability at this time to choose if you want this link to open in a new tab or directly within the dashboard. I want mine to open in a new tab, so I'm going to leave that applied and then hit apply. And I'm going to do that for each of my grade levels. Now to further separate my dashboard into gray bands here, I'm going to insert some shapes. So just like other Google tools, I have my shape option. So I'm just going to insert a rectangle. And I am just going to draw a rectangle about this big. And then you'll notice, because I've already selected my theme for here, that automatically chose my color for me, and it matches perfectly to the shade of blue that's in my image. I can now copy and paste this image by holding down my keyboard shortcut of Control C and Control V. So I could do 3 sections, or I can just resize this into one large rectangle here. And then to further accentuate here, I'm just going to insert a line, and I'm just going to set that up in between each of these areas. And then once I have one line in there, I can copy and paste that as well. And you'll notice with my line, I can also change the width of it as well if I want to make it stand out a little bit more. You have the ability to change your stroke color of your line, the width of it, and then the border style, and then how the line starts and ends. But so far, I think it's looking pretty snazzy, so I'm going to leave it like that. So now I'm ready to start adding some data here into my Data Studio file. And you'll remember from the beginning, we've already actually inserted a spreadsheet when we actually created this Data Studio project. Now, what I would like to do is, from this insert option, you'll see all the different ways that I can visualize data in Data Studio. But for this item, I would like to insert a scorecard. So once I have the scorecard selected, I can then click on my Data Studio file here, which will now allow me to customize that element that I've added to my page. So from my data tab, you can see my data source is the 6th grade response sheet, Google Forms responses, which is exactly what I want. And then you'll notice that it's going to give me a date range and a metric. The metric is my record count, and my number of pages is 4. Well, I don't want it to count the number of pages. The dimension I would like to add is the timestamp. And then from the timestamp, I would like to include my record count. What that will do is it's going to count every time someone submits the Google form based on the timestamp. My available fields in my Google form, my column headers, don't ask for the number of books read, but what it will ask for is for the timestamp. So that means every time a student submits this Google form, it will give me a record count. And every time the students submit the Google form, they're reading a book. So now I know that there have been 4 books read in 6th grade. You'll notice from the data menu here, I also have the ability to modify the style. When you select the Style tab, you have some different options. So if there's missing data, instead of saying show no data, you can show that as blank. You also have the ability to customize the font and styles of your text that's included within your scorecard here. You have the ability to change your color, and you have some additional options like hiding the metric name or centering the different options within your Data Studio. You also have the ability to change your background color, so you can see my theme colors are inserted in here, so I can make this however I would like. And you have the ability to add a border color to your scorecard if you choose, and even add a border shadow. And you can change the width of your line if you wish to as well. You also have the ability to add some padding and add a chart header, which will show on hover. So I'm just going to go ahead and work on resizing this and formatting it just like I would any other Google file, so that I get a look and feel that's similar and aligned to what visually I enjoy. Piece of data that we would like to add to our reading dashboard is going to be a count of the total number of pages read by all 6th grade students. So to do this, I'm going to select the Insert menu and then select the Table option. I'll then click on my dashboard around where I would like this table to reside, and then I can just resize it again like any other Google object. Once you have this about where you want it, you can then go through and edit this so that the data showed here is going to align with what I want. So I'm going to select the data menu over here. And in doing so, I want you to specifically pay attention to my available fields on the right-hand side. Data Studio is going to analyze my column headers when I connect my data source to a file, and it's automatically going to align or grant it a category. So you can see some of these are identifying as text with this ABC category, and some of them are identifying here as being a date. So this number of pages that has the calendar icon, and same with the timestamp. So while the timestamp is correct, that is a date, the number of pages is not a date, and it needs to be represented as a numerical value. And you can edit this in Data Studio. To do so, you will click the Resource tab and then select Manage Added Data Sources. From your Data Sources menu, under the Actions, you will select Edit. Now you'll notice here that not only do I have my field dimensions, I also have the type. I need to modify the number of pages from date to a number. To do so, I'll select the drop-down menu, and under Number, I can then select Number. Now this is displayed properly, so I may select Done, and then close this Manage Data Sources menu. You'll notice now that my available fields, the number of pages is now aligned with being a numerical value. So to get this table to represent my number of pages, I'm going to remove the date range dimension that was automatically inserted when I inserted a table onto my project. I'm going to remove the dimension of team, and under the record count, I'm going to add the metric here of my number of pages, and then delete this record count. You can now see that the total number of pages from my sample data is on here. But you'll also notice that I have this number over here to the left, and I don't necessarily need that on here. So the way that you modify that is by going to the Style tab, and you have the ability now to show your header, wrap your text, choose your colors of fonts, and your table colors here as well. But under Table and Body, I'm going to deselect the row numbers, which will remove that from my table. And I'm also going to deselect the table footer that shows the page name. So I'm going to deselect both of those and then just format this to the style that I wish my table to have. So the next piece of data that I would like to add to this dashboard is going to be a count of the total number of books read in 6th grade by each specific team. So it's going to be like a mini leaderboard so I can see between teams A, B, and C, and D which ones have the greatest number of books read. Now you'll notice from my available fields, again, I don't have a field that says number of books. I kind of worked that system a little bit for my record count by just having it count the number of timestamps. But today I'm going to show you also how to add a field to make Data Studio actually calculate that data for me without it necessarily being available. So from your available fields, you are going to select Add a Field. From the Add a Field menu here, you have the ability to go through and set up your own formula. Well, I'm going to call my field name the total number of books read. And once I have that titled, I can go in here and create a formula, much like I would if I was creating this in a spreadsheet. And the formula function I'm going to use is this count. I want to make a count of the title of the books. So then I'm going to select title of book, which will import it in here for me. And then down at the bottom of Data Studio, I'm going to get a green check mark that this formula is valid and I've created everything properly. Then I can click Save. When I've done this, my calculated field is saved, so I'll select Done. And you'll now see from my available fields, I have this total number of books function available for me. So now let's insert a chart. Insert, and then a column chart, and then click on your Data Studio project where you would like this chart to be. Now, this chart's actually pretty close to what I want. I see my different teams here at the bottom, although not in order, and I see the number of pages. I don't need the number of pages, I want the number of books. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove some of the data that it's already plugged in here for me. And instead of this number of pages under Add the Metric, I'm going to select instead the number of books read that I just created, and then I'm going to delete the number of pages. So now I have the total numbers of books read by team, and then you'll see down here I can sort this. And when I sort this, I have the ability here to customize exactly how I want this to look, because I want this in alphabetical order. So when I set sort to team, it's now correct for me. And then, just like all other items here in my Data Studio file, I can just resize this until I get it exactly how I want it to look. Right, so this is where the real magic happens behind Data Studio. So now that I have my 6th grade data inserted and formatted exactly how I want it to look, I can copy these charts and tables to my 7th and 8th grade and then simply customize them based on the spreadsheet. So just like any other Google file, I can select everything and copy and paste. And I can paste these tables, even though they still have the 6th grade data in here, under 7th grade, and then again under 8th grade. So now that I have this configured properly, I'm going to hop back over to 7th grade, because all I have to do now is change my data source from the 6th grade response to my 7th grade response. And to do so, I need to add some data to this project. So I will select the Add Data menu, which will bring me back to this initial Add Data to Report window, and then select Google Sheets. And then I'm going to find my 7th grade sheet with my form responses and my 2 options enabled and select Add. This will add this sheet data also to my report. So now that I've had that data added to my report, when I have this scorecard selected, under Data Source, I can delete this source and then select a new data source. And this time, I'm going to select that 7th grade data that I just added. Now notice when I scrolled down, it wasn't available here for me. A quick refresh of your tab should fix that. Refreshing your Data Studio project will also refresh the data associated with it. So let me select my table again, and then under Select Data Source, you'll see that my 7th grade data is now here. So now that we have the content modified for the number of books read by our 7th graders, let's also modify the data for the number of pages. So we'll just select that item, and you'll notice the data source now is that 6th grade data source, so we'll remove it. Then we'll select Data Source, and we'll choose the 7th grade sheet. This now updates the number of pages read by 7th grade, and we'll repeat that process for the number of books read by team. So I'll select first the table, remove the 6th grade data source, select data source, and choose the 7th grade. So now that my 7th grade numbers are updated, I will do the same thing for 8th grade. So I will come over to the 8th grade data source and I will remove this here, select data source, and you'll notice I don't have 8th grade inserted. So I will select the data source and select Add Data from Google Sheets, this time selecting my 8th grade form responses, selecting Add, and adding to the report. Now that this is aligned with 8th grade, I'll select my number of pages, remove 6th grade, select data source, and change it to 8th grade. And the same for the number of books by team. Remove 6th grade and add 8th grade. And just like that, I have my leaderboard dashboard ready to go by grade level. In part 2 of Data Studio, we will make grade level specific dashboards.